everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome back to Everyday Consent. Today I want to talk about polyamory, which has come up a few times on this channel already. Many of you may not be familiar with the term polyamory or what it means. So to make sure we're all on the same page, today I'll cover the basics and try to answer the question, what the heck is polyamory? The word itself comes from the Greek word for many and the Latin word for loves, so it roughly translates to many loves. Broadly speaking, polyamory refers to the practice, desire, or acceptance of having more than one sexual or romantic partners at the same time. So that's the technical definition, but what does that even mean? Let's step back to something you're more likely to be familiar with. Monogamy. Monogamy is technically the practice or state of being married to one person at a time, although it is commonly used to refer to having just one romantic or sexual partner rather than strictly speaking about marriage. In the Western world, monogamy is currently the most widely acknowledged and accepted relationship form, so polyamory is often used as an umbrella term to encompass anything else. Because of this, the term polyamory can be used to describe a wide variety of relationship styles and communities. And you can pretty safely bet that for as many people in the world identify as polyamorous or engage in polyamory, there are almost that many unique definitions of the word. Since monogamy is considered normal, polyamory already challenges a lot of assumptions about how relationships must work. Since there's already that mindset, the polyamorous or poly community is more likely than the mainstream to explore different aspects or layers of relationships. Monogamy emphasizes that one relationship must simultaneously be romantic, sexual, a very close friendship, and many other things. Polyamory, on the other hand, is often a way of taking those different layers apart and sharing them with different people, sometimes taking a single layer and duplicating it to share with many people, or even keeping all of the layers together but duplicating them to share with more than one person. We can think of most polyamorous relationships as variations on this idea. Let's talk about some of the more common forms of polyamory, starting with some you may have already heard of. For example, polygamy. Technically, polygamy means the practice or custom of having more than one wife or husband at the same time, which is essentially polyamory if all the partners involved are also married. But in our culture, polygamy is most commonly used to refer to heterosexual polygamy, which is a particular form of polygamy where one cis man is married to multiple cis women. Thinking about this in terms of relationship layers, probably all of the layers are shared between the man and each of his wives, but probably only a few layers connect the wives to each other. Another form of polyamory that you may be familiar with is so-called hookup culture, where participants may share the sexual layer of a relationship without including any other layers, and may share this with multiple people. Note that hookup culture technically fits our definition, but that participants may not be self-aware or intentional about the similarity, and may not identify as polyamorous. Another common form of polyamory that you may have heard of are open relationships or open marriages. This is when someone shares most relationship layers with one primary partner, but may share one or two layers with other partners. Usually they'll share the sexual layer, though they may also share the romantic layer. Sometimes people in open relationships will join communities to find new partners to share these layers with. One example of this that gets a lot of attention is swingers communities. Swingers parties are events where open couples and singles can meet and engage in sexual acts together. Many other polyamorous groups host meetups too, but many of these communities have a messy relationship with swinging and prefer to distance themselves from swingers. A form of polyamorous relationships that you may not have heard of is polyfidelity. Polyfidelity, also sometimes called a group marriage, is an arrangement where members usually share all layers with everyone else in the group, but no one outside of the group. Imagine a typical monogamous relationship, but with 3 or more partners. This is called polyfidelity because they are all faithful to each other. Sometimes polyfaithful groups are okay with only the sexual layer being shared outside of the group, similar to open relationships like we mentioned earlier. Polyfaithful groups that are not okay with that may use the term poly-exclusive. A polyfaithful relationship with 3 people is sometimes called a ménage à trois, though not all groups like that term. Like we saw with polygamy though, even when all the layers are shared, they may not be shared between every pair in the group. For example, a V would be 3 people where one person shares many or all layers with 2 other people, but the 2 other people don't share many layers with each other. One example would be a polygynous relationship like we described before, with 1 man and 2 wives, but Vs can have any gender arrangement and don't have to involve marriage. Like the V, groups of different sizes and with different arrangements of relationship layers might use letters or geometric shapes to represent themselves. Usually the lines in a shape represent the sexual or romantic layers. So a W might represent 5 people, where each member only shares the sexual or romantic layer with 1 or 2 other people. A pentagon would be pretty similar, but with the first and last persons sharing a sexual or romantic layer too. Think of some other letters or shapes and try to describe what kinds of arrangements they could represent. It's kind of fun. You can see how some of these shapes, especially bigger ones, might be hard to represent easily. In those cases, members might use the term web or network. Let's move on to some of the rules and tenets of polyamory. Like I said, there's lots of variation, but most respected polyamorous communities and most successful polyamorous relationships tend to share the following values. and they're generally values that appear in healthy monogamous relationships as well. The first is freedom of choice. In particular, the freedom to define and form romantic and sexual relationships outside of the structure that monogamy affords. Polyamorous individuals choose who they are in relationships with and what those relationships look like, but everyone else in those relationships gets to choose whether or not they want to be there. Someone's only a part of your W if they decide they want to be a part of your W. Which means another big value is honesty. It's important for polyamorous individuals to be honest about what they are feeling and what their intentions are. The first step in changing a relationship is to be honest about wanting to do so. Being honest about what you want is key, but also being honest about what you don't want. If you don't want to be part of someone's V, it's important to own up to that. And that honesty must continue throughout the relationship as new issues and feelings arise. Which leads to communication. Some of these relationships can get kind of complicated. The more complicated the relationship, the more communication is essential, especially because it is so different from the mainstream, and the feelings and experiences might be unfamiliar to those involved. I'll leave it at that for now. Keep in mind, the poly community is very diverse, and I couldn't possibly cover all of it in a single video. So some of these descriptions are generalizations and oversimplifications, and it's always possible that I represented something unfairly. But hopefully this gives you a top-level view of the landscape of polyamory, so the next time you hear the word, you have a decent grasp of the basics. I'll also provide a bunch of great resources in the description if you're curious and want to learn more. Let me know down in the comments if you found this video helpful, or if you'd like me to explain anything I mentioned in more detail. Do you have any questions I didn't answer, or just more that you'd like to hear about? Did I get anything wrong, or would you like to add something? If you'd like, you can share your answers or anything else in the comments, or you can always email me at everydayconsent@gmail.com. If you like this video, press that like button, and if you'd like to see more from me, make sure you subscribe. Thanks everyone, happy consenting, and I'll see you next week. Ow. I hit my tooth. Keep in mind, it's so far back.